The Dinar Daily, your dedicated source for news, insights, and comprehensive analysis on Iraq's currency, the Iraqi Dinar, $IQD. Today, we dive deep into the most electrifying topic circulating among observers, the concept of deleting the three zeros from the dinar's value. This isn't a minor policy update. It's a profound discussion that financial enthusiasts have been tracking for years. And we're going to meticulously dissect the process so you can grasp its full significance and why it's generating such intense conversation. The initial reaction for many when they first encounter the phrase deleting the three zeros is to imagine a literal physical action. Picture this: a team of central bank clerks in Baghdad, armed with scissors or erasers, painstakingly removing the last three zeros from every paper banknote in existence. This vibrant, almost cinematic image of brand new, smaller denomination bills being rushed to banks overnight, ready for an immediate swap out with the old currency, is a common but fundamentally inaccurate mental picture. However, as veteran commentator Frank 26, who has closely followed the dinar's trajectory for an extended period, explains, this physical alteration scenario is far from the reality of the policy being discussed. There is no large-scale manual task force assigned to deface or replace the billions of notes currently in circulation. The fundamental change at the core of this discussion does not require the replacement of every single bill in the hands of the public. Instead, it is an adjustment that occurs in the sophisticated electronic and accounting frameworks that govern the currency's overall valuation. The zeros in question are not primarily found on the physical paper in people's wallets. They reside as digital entries within bank databases, on computer screens calculating exchange rates, and inside the complex software used by the Central Bank of Iraq, CBI. This means the transformation is less about the appearance of paper currency and entirely about the behind-the-scenes numerical processing by financial systems. The moment the CBI updates its core rate tables within its secure network, the global financial structure is designed to instantly reflect these new values, making a physical recall or printing effort unnecessary for the initial revaluation. This is precisely why experts like Frank 26 emphasize that the popular imagery of cutting zeros is a significant misunderstanding. The actual maneuver is far simpler in execution, yet exponentially more powerful in its financial effect. To truly understand the gravity of this proposed shift, one must first look at the dinar's current position within the international currency market, as its current valuation is central to the entire debate among analysts and investors worldwide. Presently, the Iraqi dinar trades at an exceptionally small fraction of a US dollar, currently requiring over 100 dinars to purchase a single dollar. This tiny fraction of a cent is indicative of a currency that is severely undervalued in terms of practical, day-to-day international transactions and trade. This significant disparity is the driving force behind the close attention given to the three zeros discussion, particularly by retail currency speculation communities outside of Iraq, who anticipate a major adjustment. When officials or financial observers discuss the removal of those zeros, they are not contemplating a minor cosmetic redesign of the banknotes. They are describing a major mathematical movement of the decimal point within the digital ledgers. Should the Central Bank of Iraq execute this bold move, the dinar's value could instantly jump to a far higher rate per US dollar. This action is a fundamental shift in the dinar's monetary policy and exchange rate alignment with international standards. Such a drastic move would not, as some imagine, cause the physical size or design of the existing dinar notes to shrink or change. The physical bills would remain the same, but the purchasing power represented by each one would expand dramatically within the realm of electronic banking, global trade settlement, and official bank ledgers. What currently functions as a currency worth less than a penny could suddenly carry a value closer to a substantial fraction of a dollar, representing a colossal shift in its economic standing. This explains why Frank 26 and other analysts stress that the intended Policy is not about magically creating economic wealth from nothing. It is about a calculated realignment of the numbers to better reflect the underlying economic potential and resources of Iraq as a major global oil producer. The adjustment may appear simple on paper, a mere movement of a decimal 3 places to the right, but its practical and financial consequences for both Iraq and the international community are profound and far-reaching. Frank 26 often extends this concept to explore the real-world implications of such a change for both Iraqi citizens and foreign investors who hold the dinar. Consider the average worker in Baghdad today. They are paid a salary perhaps totaling hundreds of thousands of dinars. But when that figure is converted into a globally traded currency like the US dollar, the take-home value is significantly diminished compared to workers in neighboring, more financially robust economies. Now, imagine that same worker's monthly paycheck after the announced rate change fundamentally redefines the value of each dinar note. Suddenly, that local currency would command substantially greater purchasing power, not only within Iraq's borders but also when exchanged internationally. This revaluation would instantly strengthen the financial position of local families, allowing for greater affordability of imported goods, improved saving opportunities, and a significant boost to confidence in their national currency's long-term stability for international speculators who have purchased and held the dinar for years, patiently waiting for an upward adjustment. The effect of a revaluation could be even more acute. A quantity of dinar notes that currently holds a small dollar value could see its worth leap overnight, potentially turning what was a highly speculative dormant asset into a significant financial gain. Some analysts have even speculated that the new rate could rise above the often discussed fractional dollar mark, potentially approaching or even exceeding $1 per dinar, further increasing the magnitude of the revaluation event. If such an outcome were realized, where a currency currently worth a tiny fraction of a cent suddenly trades for $1 or more, it would embody the aspiration that drives the persistent, widespread conversation surrounding the dinar. This optimistic outlook, a blend of pure economic calculation and hope for national financial transformation, is what keeps the revaluation debate a constant fixture in financial news and among retail investor communities across the globe. The central question remains, is this change genuinely plausible? The concept of deleting the 3 zeros gains its credibility partly from the fact that the Central Bank of Iraq, CBI, has openly referenced the idea in several official past statements. They have detailed plans for gradual financial modernization, the strengthening of their banking infrastructure, and a carefully developed long-term strategy designed to enhance the nation's financial stability and resilience. Despite these governmental assurances, the prospect of any sudden, drastic shift in currency valuation necessarily raises serious concerns among economists. Any large-scale revaluation carries inherent risks of market disruption, potential shocks to both domestic commerce and international trade flows, and the very real possibility of confusion or panic among the general populace. Most everyday citizens may not immediately comprehend how a new, fundamentally stronger rate translates to the value of their wages, savings, or daily cash transactions. However, Frank 26 consistently emphasizes that Iraq's government and its banking sector are approaching this process with extreme deliberation and caution. He cites years of preparatory work, which includes the implementation of advanced digital banking platforms, the adoption of internationally recognized accounting practices, and deepening collaboration with major global financial institutions. These steps, he argues, are not isolated occurrences, but deliberate markers of readiness for a significant monetary policy change. In the analytical view of Frank 26, Iraq would not repeatedly discuss the possibility of deleting zeros in public forums if it hadn't already put in place the necessary financial infrastructure to manage such a complex transition smoothly. From this perspective, the official caution from authorities does not necessarily conflict with the optimism of outside observers. Instead, the two elements combine to suggest a nation approaching a major financial turning point with careful, calculated confidence in its long-term strategy ***. Another critical theme often highlighted in Frank's commentary, and one that deeply resonates with the Iraqi people, is the central issue of purchasing power. For many years, families across Iraq have had to cope with the severe financial burden imposed by a weak domestic currency. Basic necessities such as groceries, fuel, and clothing consume an inordinate share of monthly income because the local dinar stretches so little against the powerful US dollar in international trade. Simple items like a loaf of bread, a sack of rice, or a liter of gasoline, while inexpensive in a country with a stronger currency, translate in Iraq to large piles of dinar notes which quickly erode household budgets. This persistent currency weakness has been a major source of widespread frustration, limiting not only essential consumption but also opportunities for meaningful saving and investment for the average citizen. A genuine revaluation, if enacted, could instantly transform this daily economic reality for millions. If each dinar were to suddenly command a value closer to that of $1, as some optimistic scenarios suggest, local families would find their salaries extending much further. Imported goods would become more affordable for consumers, and domestic businesses would gain access to foreign markets on fairer, more competitive terms. Citizens would likely experience a measurable, immediate improvement in their overall living standards and economic outlook. Frank, 26, frames this proposed change as more than just a financial ledger adjustment. He sees it as a moral and social reset, one that could potentially restore dignity and confidence to the Iraqi populace by providing them with a currency that better reflects the nation's vast natural resources and economic potential. For many Iraqis, this is a matter that transcends speculation or profit. It's about achieving economic fairness and personal empowerment in a challenging global market. One of the most common points of confusion that Frank 26 explicitly addresses is the distinction between revaluation and what is known as a lump price or redenomination. In traditional economic terms, a redenomination occurs when a government issues a new currency with fewer zeros, effectively changing the nominal face value without altering the underlying real-world purchasing power. This is often done to simplify transactions in countries suffering from extreme hyperinflation. For example, a country might replace a 25,000-unit bill with a new 25-unit bill, but the overall purchasing power in the marketplace would remain exactly the same. Citizens would exchange old notes for new, smaller numbered ones, and their money would still buy the same amount of goods as before. This slow process is essentially cosmetic, intended only to make accounting and daily transactions more manageable without strengthening the currency's actual value or enriching citizens. Frank 26 is emphatic that the policy under discussion in Iraq is not this traditional redenomination scenario. He asserts that the phrase "deleting the zeros" describes a revaluation, a fundamental, value-driven monetary shift rather than a purely cosmetic alteration. This distinction is absolutely crucial in the revaluation model. The same physical banknotes currently held by the public would remain in circulation but would electronically carry a dramatically greater worth on the international stage. The citizen would not be required to trade in their current physical notes for new ones with fewer zeros. Instead, the numerical value within Iraq's electronic financial system would shift to accurately reflect the stronger, adjusted exchange rate. The paper currency itself would be physically unchanged, but the economic value attached to each note would multiply significantly. In Frank's analysis, this is the true essence of the deleting the zeros concept, altering the dinar's representative worth against global currencies, not altering the paper in people's hands. This potential scenario is particularly eye-opening for foreign investors and explains why so many hang on Frank's every update. Consider a straightforward example. A person who currently holds 1 million Iraqi dinar at the present exchange rate that some converts to only a small dollar amount. While not a massive fortune, it represents a calculated speculative asset holding for an investor committed to the dinar's potential. Now, Project what happens if the rate were to shift to a much higher value, such as the one Frank often discusses. That exact same stack of physical notes, completely untouched and unaltered, would suddenly be valued at a substantially larger dollar amount. And if the rate were to climb even higher, into the highly optimistic dollar equivalent range, the corresponding value would leap again, reaching a staggering, life-changing figure for a dedicated, long-term investor. These potential figures are the engine driving the sustained excitement, constant speculation, and ongoing debate within the foreign investor communities. The very possibility of a relatively small, patient investment transforming into a potentially life-altering sum is highly enticing, which is why so many people have remained engaged with the dinar narrative for years, often weathering rumors and delays. However, Frank 26 consistently balances this hope with necessary caution. He never presents these optimistic projections as certainties or guarantees, nor does he ever claim to possess privileged, inside knowledge of an official decision date. He frequently uses clear disclaimers such as, "In my opinion, I'm all," to underscore that his views are analytical interpretations based on observable facts, not official pronouncements from the Central Bank of Iraq. By maintaining this necessary balance of strong optimism and grounded realism, his commentary sustains its credibility among listeners who are eager for a positive outcome but remain wary, hopeful yet cautious about the inherent risks involved in such high speculation. The overall goal is to provide analysis while reminding the audience that the final decision rests solely with Iraq's monetary authorities. When analyzing the idea of revaluing the Iraqi dinar, it is crucial to recognize that Iraq cannot simply flip a switch and make this change in isolation. Every decision regarding its currency is intrinsically tied not only to pressing domestic concerns, but also to the highly complex web of international trade, the dynamics of global oil sales, and the ever-fluctuating currency exchange markets worldwide. As a major global oil exporter, any revaluation would directly impact how large-scale contracts are settled, how national oil revenues are calculated, and how international trading partners price their imports and exports into Iraq. For instance, if oil continues to be priced and sold in US dollars, but Iraq's domestic currency suddenly strengthens dramatically, the conversion of those massive dollar revenues back into dinars would change the entire national budget and fiscal planning outlook. Likewise, global financial markets must be given time to adjust seamlessly to the new valuation. International commercial banks, various payment systems, and foreign exchange platforms must all synchronize their ledgers to reflect the change simultaneously to avoid widespread market disruptions. This explains why the timing of a revaluation is the most closely guarded aspect of the entire process. Officials cannot risk announcing or executing such a monumental move without ensuring every major global player is fully prepared. Analysts observing the situation in Iraq are currently divided. Some argue that Iraq has never been closer to achieving this long-term goal, pointing to technical system testing, major updates to the banking framework, and recent, measurable policy reforms as strong evidence of tangible progress. Others, however, remain cautious, highlighting the country's persistent internal political struggles, ongoing regional tensions, and deep-seated bureaucratic inefficiencies that could easily stall any forward momentum, as they have in the past. Frank 26 tends to lean toward the optimistic interpretation, seeing Iraq's consistent steps, from rolling out advanced digital banking platforms to establishing new partnerships with international financial institutions, as deliberate, carefully planned milestones on a definitive roadmap. In his view, these are not merely random or disconnected reforms, but a sequence of calculated actions specifically building toward the eventual, anticipated revaluation moment. Of course, any full conversation about the dinar is incomplete without a frank acknowledgement of the skeptics. Critics of the revaluation narrative are quick to point out that Iraq has historically made many promises about economic reform and has frequently failed to deliver. Over the past 2 decades, there have been countless announcements of major reforms, new policies, and large-scale reconstruction projects that either completely stalled or quietly abandoned, or never reached their initially promised operational scale, many skeptics rightly point to persistent issues like systemic corruption within government institutions, deeply entrenched political rivalries, and complex external influences that continue to severely hinder Iraq's ability to execute bold, decisive financial reforms. For those who remain skeptical, this long pattern of delays and missed opportunities is more than enough to dampen enthusiasm for a sudden currency shift. They argue that investors basing their hopes on a dramatic currency shift may be overlooking the often slow and unpredictable reality of governance in Iraq. Supporters, however, push back against this skepticism with equal conviction. They argue that the Iraq of today is fundamentally different from the Iraq of years past. The country is currently under increasing pressure, both from its domestic population and international partners, to deliver tangible, transparent reforms. Citizens are demanding greater accountability, and global financial partners expect stronger governance. Evidence of modernization is clearly visible in the upgraded financial systems, the initiation of anti-corruption campaigns, and more assertive leadership within the central bank. Supporters believe that a successful currency revaluation would serve as one of the most powerful and visible signals of genuine progress, a measurable action that decisively demonstrates Iraq's ability to move forward. For those holding this view, the difference between the past and present lies in the unyielding momentum and the sheer necessity of the change. What are the core lessons that observers should take away from all of this commentary and analysis? The first and most vital is clarity on the concept itself. Deleting zeros has nothing to do with physically cutting paper notes or exchanging entire stacks of old currency for new, smaller denominations. It is exclusively about an electronic, system-level recalibration of value, a complex decision that instantly changes how the dinar is priced and interacts with the world's financial architecture. The second lesson revolves around the potential outcomes. According to Frank's interpretation, the potential scenarios for the dinar's new exchange rate could span a wide range, depending entirely on the strategic position the central bank chooses for its currency. These figures are not random speculation, but mathematical projections of what happens when the decimal point is shifted by 3 places. The enormous potential gap between the current fraction of a penny and a potential dollar plus valuation clearly illustrates why the concept holds such powerful, enduring appeal. The third lesson is grounded in context. While it must be stated clearly that no official revaluation has yet been declared by the CBI, the accumulation of financial momentum is undeniable. From banking system upgrades to major policy reforms, Iraq's financial landscape is visibly and steadily shifting. Every single development, regardless of its size, is closely scrutinized by investors worldwide who recognize that incremental steps may be leading toward a much larger financial transformation. These combined lessons encourage all observers to view the matter with both analytical precision and a balanced perspective. For those who currently hold the dinar, the continuous news and commentary naturally spark a mix of intense excitement and necessary caution. The potential upside is massive, the possibility that a modest speculative holding could one day transform into a significant dollar value. Yet, speculation remains speculation until Iraq's monetary authorities issue a formal and unambiguous declaration. No amount of external analysis, hopeful forecasting, or eager anticipation can substitute for an official change in the exchange rate. This is precisely why Frank 26 consistently stresses the need for patience, grounding, and realism in all his messages to the community. He openly acknowledges the allure of life-changing financial gains, but also constantly reminds his audience that the final, decisive action rests entirely with Iraq's central bank and its leadership. The timing is not a factor that outside investors can influence, and the exact new rate, if and when it changes, will not be announced in advance by commentators or outside analysts. In this sense, staying actively informed is highly valuable, but maintaining financial discipline and a balanced emotional state is even more critical. Many veteran observers of the dinar story have watched countless rumors surge and vanish over the years. What truly separates them from those who have become disappointed is their ability to treat speculation as a distinct possibility rather than an unshakable certainty. Frank's regular emphasis on, in my opinion, is more than just a legal disclaimer. It is sound advice. It accurately reflects the reality that while the groundwork for a revaluation may be continuously forming and the logical case for the shift is compelling, the final, binding decision belongs only to the authorities who control Iraq's monetary policy. For investors, the wisest approach is to remain hopeful but always measured, staying fully prepared for change but never financially dependent on promises until they become a concrete reality. To conclude our discussion, let us return to the striking headline, 3 zeros gone. According to the interpretation provided by Frank 26, the potential answer is yes, but the mechanism is fundamentally different from what most people initially envision. The common mental image of scissors physically cutting paper currency, or banks issuing completely new notes with fewer digits, is simply not the reality being discussed. Instead, what is actively being prepared is a major mathematical and electronic shift, a powerful change rooted in financial systems, complex accounting adjustments, and the revaluation of worth that occurs digitally across the global network of banks and exchanges. This critical distinction cannot be overstated because it reframes the entire conversation and helps to avoid false expectations. The true power of the anticipated adjustment is not in the mere appearance of the physical bills but in the electronic numbers that define their fundamental economic worth. If and when this change is enacted, the effect could be profoundly transformative for investors who have waited patiently for years, and it would be equally significant for Iraq's national economy, which has labored under the heavy weight of an undervalued currency for far too long. Whether the final numerical rate lands at a fractional dollar amount, a dollar equivalent figure, or another rate entirely, the mere fact that such high-level discussions are occurring publicly is in itself a significant signal. It indicates that Iraq is steadily progressing along a strategic path that could lead to a revaluation moment. Such a moment would not just ripple through the dinar investor community. It would resonate across global oil markets, international trade agreements, and financial circles worldwide, demanding immediate attention. As this complex journey continues, one clear reality persists. Speculation is a powerful force, but official confirmation is the decisive factor. Until the Central Bank of Iraq issues its formal declaration, everything remains within the realm of what if. Yet the sheer possibility is compelling enough that millions of eyes worldwide remain fixed on every development in the country's financial landscape. Frank 26 and other experienced observers consistently remind their audiences to balance their hope with patience, recognizing that the timing belongs entirely to Iraq's monetary authorities. Still, the visible accumulation of reforms, infrastructure, upgrades, and strengthening international engagement points toward a momentum that is increasingly difficult to ignore. For every investor, the wisest stance is not one of blind optimism, nor rigid skepticism, but one of readiness, being fully prepared for an eventual change while acknowledging that it has not yet occurred is key. That is precisely why staying connected to reliable updates from sources like the Dinar Daily matters so much. Developments in Iraq's currency policy do not typically arrive as slow trickles. They often arrive suddenly with official announcements that can reshape the entire outlook overnight. Missing such a moment could mean missing history in the making. As the saying goes, fortune favors the prepared. Stay locked into the Dinar Daily for every new development, because when that announcement finally comes, whether it is tomorrow, next month, or further down the road, you will want to hear it first, understand its clear implications, and be positioned to act wisely in response. Disclaimer: the information presented here is for educational and informational purposes only. It reflects commentary, analysis, and opinion, including perspectives attributed to Frank 26, and should never be construed as financial advice, investment guidance, or an official statement from the Central Bank of Iraq or any government authority. Currency speculation carries significant risk, and outcomes are always uncertain. Viewers must conduct their own comprehensive research, exercise extreme caution, and consult with licensed financial professionals before making any investment decisions.